Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. Usually, when an engine blows out on a lonely highway, you just, pop the hood, you replace a part, and you move on.
Right, yeah. It's a simple mechanical fix.
Exactly. But what happens when the thing that is completely stalled out isn't your car, but, well, your entire life?
That is a much heavier breakdown.
It really is. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the story of a man who is exactly 40 years old, totally broke, deeply alienated from his wife, and currently physically stranded on the side of a rural road.
And the really wild part is that the groundskeeper he's about to meet, just some guy in overalls, is going to completely dismantle absolutely everything he believes about success.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating setup. We're looking at a narrative that takes all these abstract concepts of personal development and just, grounds them in this very visceral, relatable crisis.
Definitely. So the source material for this deep dive is a book called 12 Pillars by Jim Rohn and Chris Widener. And rather than presenting just this dry academic list of rules, they constructed a parable.
Take a story.
Right, exactly. They basically built a diagnostic manual for the human condition, but they disguised it as a story about a broken down car and this sprawling, beautiful estate.
So our protagonist is Michael Jones. And I gotta say, he is the absolute embodiment of the midlife wall.
Oh, 100%. He is stuck.
Like completely stuck. He's working a job that barely pays the bills, his income has been stagnant for a decade, and he comes home every single day to a marriage that is essentially just two roommates passing in the hallway.
Yeah, he and his wife, Amy, are just emotionally desolate.
Right. And Michael is basically just stuck in the muddy waters of existence, waiting for something outside of himself to magically fix his situation.
Which, waiting for the world to change before you do is a universally fatal error in personal development.
It really is. So his inciting incident is beautifully literal. His car literally starts coughing black smoke and just dies on the road.
A physical manifestation of his life, basically.
Exactly. So he wanders off the road looking for a phone and finds himself at the gates of this magnificent mansion. And the estate is simply called 12 Pillars.
Which is obviously where the title comes from.
Right. He walks onto the property and meets this old man in overalls named Charlie, who is just, tending the grounds.
Now, before we dig into the actual philosophies Charlie begins to impart to Michael while they're looking at this smoking engine, we really need to understand the architectural mind behind this story.
You mean Jim Rohn?
Yeah, Jim Rohn. Because if we don't understand the origin of these concepts, it's really easy to just dismiss them as, like, another motivational poster.
Oh, for sure. The credibility of the source material is deeply tied to his actual biography.
Exactly. So Jim Rohn is widely considered the godfather of modern personal development, but he didn't start in some ivory tower. He was actually born on an Idaho farm in 1930.
Just a completely normal working class background.
Yeah, and by the time he was 25, he was in Michael's exact position. I mean, broke, discouraged, drowning in debt, and basically looking for someone to blame for his lack of progress.
He was literally the guy sitting on the side of the road blaming the economy and the weather.
He was. But the turning point was his encounter with a mentor, an entrepreneur named Earl Schoaf. And the key here is that Schoaf didn't give Ron a loan.
Right? He didn't hand him cash.
No, he gave him a specific philosophical framework. It was all about wealth, human behavior, and internal growth. And Ron applied these principles with such intensity that he actually became a millionaire by age 31.
Wow. In just 6 years.
Yeah, but tragically, it was just before Schoaf passed away. So Ron then dedicated the next 4 decades to distilling and sharing those exact mechanics of success.
Which means the dynamic between Michael and Charlie in our story is actually a direct fictionalized reflection of Ron's own apprenticeship.
That's exactly right. It's his life translated into fiction.
So let's get into the mechanics of that very first encounter. Michael is complaining to Charlie about his boss. The meager paycheck, his wife's attitude, his terrible luck.
Just dumping all his problems on this stranger.
Yeah. And Charlie listens. He helps him tinker with the car. And then he delivers the very first pillar of this entire philosophy. Pillar 1, personal growth.
And what does he tell him?
He says, work harder on yourself than on your job. He basically posits that your income and your success will rarely, if ever, exceed your level of personal development.
Which is such a massive paradigm shift. I mean, the underlying psychology there completely challenges the core assumption of the modern workforce.
So.
Well, We are deeply conditioned to believe that external input like working longer hours, taking on more shifts, just grinding away at the office automatically results in external output, right? Like higher pay or better relationships.
Yeah, that's what we're all taught. Just work harder.
But Charlie is introducing a structural reality here. Success is not a physical object you pursue and capture. It is a state of being that you attract by the person you become.
Okay, I see the logic, but um, putting that into practice when you're already exhausted from a 9 to 5 feels almost impossible.
It does feel overwhelming, yeah.
Like, how does Charlie expect Michael to bridge that gap? Because realistically, if someone works 80 hours a week, structurally, they will make more money.
Right, they will make more absolute dollars in the short term, sure, but they won't increase their fundamental value to the marketplace.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. If you are a fry cook working 80 hours instead of 40, you've doubled your wages, but you're still trading low leverage time for money.
You're just doing twice as much of the same thing.
Exactly. But if you spend those extra 40 hours developing the skills to manage the restaurant or even open your own, you change your economic classification entirely.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. I actually like to conceptualize this as an internal thermostat.
Oh, I like that analogy. How does that work?
So imagine the psychological thermostat inside your brain is set to, say, 70 degrees. And that 70 degrees represents a mediocre level of self-discipline, average communication skills, and maybe just a baseline cynical attitude.
Right, just a very average, uninspired state.
Exactly. And then suddenly you get a lucky break. You win the lottery, or you get a massive promotion that you really aren't prepared for.
Okay, so your life experiences a sudden heat wave.
Yes. The temperature spikes to 90 degrees, but the biological imperative of any organism is homeostasis, right?
Absolutely. The system will always fight to return to its baseline.
It will. So if your internal thermostat is still set at 70, you will subconsciously sabotage that promotion because you just lack the leadership skills to sustain it.
Or you'll squander the lottery winnings.
Exactly. You will start a fight with that amazing partner because you secretly don't believe you deserve them. You will literally subconsciously cool your life back down to match your internal setting.
Because you are always going to regress to the mean of your personal development. That is such a powerful way to look at it.
It's terrifying, honestly.
It is. And the danger for Michael, and honestly for anyone listening who feels stalled out, is that he is sitting on the side of the road waiting for a heat wave.
He expects his boss to suddenly become generous.
Or his wife to miraculously become affectionate, yeah. And he expects all this without first upgrading his own psychological thermostat.
That is a brutal mirror to look into.
Yeah.
If you want a better reality, you have to become a fundamentally better organism to sustain it.
You really do.
So Michael manages to get his car running, and he goes back to his dreary life. But that concept is just eating at him.
It planted a seed.
Right. So 3 weeks later, he drives back to the estate on his own accord. He finds Charlie working in the massive, beautifully manicured gardens. And this actually moves us into the physical requirements of sustaining that first pillar.
Because personal growth requires immense energy. You cannot upgrade your psychological thermostat if your physical machinery is failing.
Which brings us to pillar 2, health.
Exactly. But Charlie explicitly defines it as three-dimensional: body, soul, and spirit.
Now, we all know we should exercise and eat right. I mean, it's the oldest cliche in the self-help genre.
Right. Eat your vegetables, go for a run.
Yeah, but Charlie isn't telling Michael to go get a six-pack, is he?
No, not at all. He's talking about biochemical capacity. The brain is an organ completely reliant on the physical vessel to supply it with oxygen, nutrients, and hormonal balance.
So if you're eating junk,
If you are surviving on processed food and depriving your body of cardiovascular exertion, your cognitive functions literally degrade.
oh wow, so it's not just about looking good.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Your patience, your creativity, your ability to regulate your emotions, these are not just abstract character traits, they are biological processes.
That completely reframes Michael's marriage for me.
How so?
Well, his marriage isn't necessarily failing just because he doesn't love Amy. It's failing because his prefrontal cortex is exhausted.
Oh, that's a brilliant point.
Right. He comes home from a job he hates. His physical vitality is at absolute zero, and he literally lacks the biochemical capacity to exhibit patience or empathy toward her.
And furthermore, the triad of body, soul, and spirit implies a reciprocal relationship. A failure in one dimension inevitably collapses the others. We see this clinically all the time.
Like how stress makes you sick.
Exactly. Emotional emptiness or a lack of spiritual grounding often manifests as profound physical exhaustion. I mean, a person can sleep for 10 hours and still wake up deeply fatigued if their soul is running on empty.
So Charlie is diagnosing Michael's lethargy not just as a lack of sleep, but as a lack of purpose.
A lack of purpose and physical vitality, yes.
Okay, so Michael's mind might be waking up to pillar 1, and his body is getting tuned up in pillar 2. But a sharp mind and a healthy body really don't mean much if the immediate world around him is crumbling.
Right, you need somewhere to direct that energy.
Exactly. And Charlie actually uses the physical garden they're standing in to demonstrate the architecture of human connection, which is pillar 3, relationships.
The garden metaphor is remarkably precise here. I mean, a garden left to its own devices does not naturally produce beautiful roses or an abundance of vegetables.
No, it just gets overgrown.
The natural trajectory of an untended plot of land is chaos. It produces weeds. And Charlie explains that human relationships operate on the exact same law of entropy.
They degrade over time if you do nothing.
Exactly. They require significant time, immense effort, and constant active cultivation.
I have to admit, pillar 3 hits me hard because it touches on the terror of complacency.
Well, it's so easy to slip into.
It is. Michael realizes he essentially treated his marriage like a completed transaction. He bought the house, he got the ring, he checked the box, and he just put the relationship on autopilot.
Which is so common because human beings suffer from a psychological phenomenon called hedonic adaptation.
Hedonic adaptation. What's that?
So we possess this incredible evolutionary trait that allows us to get used to our circumstances. And this is usually good, right? It protects us from prolonged grief after a tragedy.
We adapt to the baseline.
We adapt. But the dark side of hedonic adaptation is that we also get used to the wonderful things in our lives. We adapt to the new house, the new job, and the spouse.
Oh, so the thrill just fades?
The brain literally stops registering them as novel. It stops rewarding us with dopamine for interacting with them, and it just puts the relationship in the background.
Wow. That actually perfectly explains a specific word used in the source text. It highlights that relationships require time, effort, and imagination.
Imagination, yeah.
I always found that third word odd, like, why imagination? But if we are fighting hedonic adaptation, imagination is actually the only weapon.
That's a profound way to look at it.
Yeah, it means you have to actively envision new ways to connect.
Yeah.
You have to force your brain out of autopilot by, imagining what would surprise your partner or imagining how the world looks through their eyes today.
Because if you don't use your imagination,
Your relationship devolves into a purely logistical partnership. It's just about paying the electric bill and taking out the trash.
and without active weeding, which in this context means addressing small resentments, communicating unspoken frustrations, and intentionally designing shared experiences, the weeds of neglect will absolutely choke out the foundational love.
It's scary how fast that can happen.
It really is.
So if imagination is how you design a relationship, goal setting is how you design a life. Let's follow Michael to the next step. He's actually enjoying these conversations with Charlie, so he invites him to meet off the estate at a local diner.
Yeah, they get off the property.
Yeah, they sit in a booth. They order coffee from a waitress named Sue. And Charlie introduces the concept of the architecture of the future, which is pillar 4, goal setting.
And goal setting in the Jim Rohn philosophy demands a very strict differentiation between major goals and minor goals. And it insists on the absolute necessity of externalizing those goals by actually writing them down.
Now, I always push back a little on rigid goal setting.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, having a 5-year plan with every dollar and every month mapped out, it feels less like a strategy and more like a cage.
Ah, I see what you mean.
Like, what if you want to pivot? What if a random, amazing opportunity arises? Rigid goals always seem to me like they kill the spontaneity of life.
I get that, but the mistake there is viewing goals as a cage rather than a compass.
A compass?
Think of it this way. If you are lost in a dense forest, having a compass doesn't mean you are forced to march in a straight, miserable line.
Right, you can still walk around a tree.
Exactly. You can still stop to admire a view or take a detour to avoid a steep cliff. The compass just ensures that when you resume walking, you know exactly which direction north is.
Oh, I love that.
Because without that compass, spontaneity isn't freedom. It's just wandering aimlessly in circles. And Michael has been wandering in circles for 40 years. Goals provide the freedom of direction.
That distinction changes everything. It's the difference between being a tourist and just a drifter.
Precisely.
And Charlie shares an anecdote at the diner that underscores this. He talks about setting a goal to make $50,000 instead of $25,000. But the reason for the goal is the twist.
Right. It's not about the money.
Exactly. He says, you don't set the goal for the money itself. You set the goal for what the process of earning it makes of you.
The psychology of identity shifting through goal pursuit is profound. The why, the reason to achieve, is the actual engine. The
Yeah.
what is just the destination you punch into the GPS.
Because it forces you to change.
Exactly. When you aim for a significantly higher goal, the gap between who you are and who you need to be forces a biological and cognitive adaptation.
You literally have to become a different person.
You are forced to become more disciplined, more resourceful, and a better communicator. And here's the beautiful part. Even if you fail and only hit $40,000, your baseline identity has permanently shifted.
You are no longer the person who is only capable of earning $25,000.
Exactly.
You've upgraded the thermostat.
Yes, the thermostat is permanently higher.
But once you have that compass, you still have to take the physical steps every single day to walk north, right? And that brings us to the agonizing friction of the present moment. Managing the currency of life, which is pillar 5, time management.
And time management is universally misunderstood as just, a productivity hack, like buying a better planner.
Right, color coding your calendar.
Yeah, but Charlie frames it as an existential crisis. He presents Michael with the dichotomy of pain. The pain of discipline weighs ounces, while the pain of regret weighs tons.
Ounces versus tons. I have absolutely chosen the ounces of comfort on Friday night, only to wake up to the tons of regret on Monday morning.
We all have.
It is terrifying how easy it is to justify in the moment. You just tell yourself, oh, I'm tired, I'll work on that project tomorrow, or I'll talk to my spouse about this issue later.
And there's a neurological reason for that. The human brain heavily discounts future consequences in favor of immediate gratification. It's a concept known as temporal discounting.
Temporal discounting, meaning the future just feels less real.
Exactly. The ounce of discipline required to go for a run or to sit down and audit your finances is a sharp, immediate pain. The brain actively rejects it.
Because it hurts right now.
Right now. But the pain of regret is abstract, it lives in the future, so the brain just ignores it. But Charlie points out that time is the only truly finite currency we possess. Every time you avoid the ounce of discipline, you are essentially taking out a high-interest loan against your future self.
And Michael is carrying 40 years of accumulated debt.
A mountain of it.
He looks back at the decades and realizes the crushing weight of being a stranger to his wife and the humiliation of a stagnant career. The effort it would have taken to build a beautiful life, those daily ounces, would have been infinitely lighter than the tons of regret he is currently dragging around.
It's a heavy realization.
It really is.
Yeah.
So if you are listening to this right now, this is the audit. You have to ask yourself, are you actively choosing the ounces today, or are you packing on the tons for a decade from now?
And making that choice requires monumental willpower if you are constantly fighting your environment, which leads directly to Pillar 6. Surrounding yourself with the right people, the power of proximity.
Charlie drops 3 questions on Michael here that are just absolute surgical strikes. He asks, who are you around? What are they doing to you? And is it okay?
Those are brutal questions to answer, honestly, because the concept of associations is arguably the most powerful external force in human behavior.
More powerful than individual willpower.
Oh, absolutely. We like to view ourselves as self-contained individuals with ironclad free will, but neurobiology tells a completely different story. We possess mirror neurons. These are brain cells that literally fire both when we act and when we simply observe someone else act.
Wait, really? So just watching someone affects my brain?
Yes. We are biologically wired to sync our nervous systems, our vocabularies, and our limitations to the people in closest proximity to us.
I view this through the lens of passive smoking.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, because you don't have to be the one holding the cigarette to suffer the physiological consequences of being trapped in a toxic room.
You're still inhaling the smoke.
Exactly. You could have the best intentions, the clearest goals, but if you are sitting in a room full of chain smokers complaining about how unfair life is, your lungs are going to turn black. You will passively absorb their cynicism.
And the inversion of that is equally true and honestly incredibly hopeful.
The passive benefits.
Yes, you benefit passively from being in a room full of motivated, brilliant people. You absorb their problem-solving frameworks. You absorb their ambition.
So Charlie is forcing Michael to evaluate the guys he commiserates with at work.
Exactly. And Michael realizes that their shared complaining isn't just harmless venting, it is an anchor. They are actively reinforcing that 70-degree thermostat setting we talked about earlier.
Wow. So if you curate your external environment by cutting out the passive smoke, you then have to fill that clean air with high-quality internal influences. And this introduces Pillar 7, the unending classroom, or lifelong learning.
Charlie delivers a foundational Rohn principle here. Formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune.
A fortune in all areas of life, not just money.
Right. The directive here is intentional, continuous learning, specifically through reading. He recommends classic texts like Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich and Og Mandino's The Greatest Salesman in the World.
Now, it's easy to hear, you should read more books and feel patronized, like a teacher wagging their finger at you. But Charlie isn't talking about reading to pass a standardized test.
No, not at all. He is talking about expanding your structural capacity to capture value.
What does that look like?
Consider the analogy of a waterfall. If life, with all its wealth, joy, and opportunities, is a rushing waterfall, most people approach it with a tiny teacup.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how much water is flowing, they only have the cognitive framework to capture a few ounces. Lifelong learning is the process of putting down the teacup and building a bucket, and eventually constructing a massive vat.
You are basically building custom tools for your specific life. Like if you realize your marriage is failing, you don't just sit around and hope it gets better. You go read a book by a clinical psychologist on communication.
You build a bigger bucket.
Exactly. If you want to invest, you take a course on asset allocation. Self-education allows you to literally steal decades of someone else's trial and error and download it right into your brain in a weekend.
And one of the most vital frameworks you can choose to download is the mechanics of value exchange. Which brings us to Pillar 8, the art of service. Charlie provocatively frames this around influence and sales.
Oh, this is a tricky one.
He tells Michael point blank, all of life is sales.
See, the moment people hear the word sales, the defenses just go right up.
Oh, instantly.
Because it feels slimy. We immediately picture it like high-pressure tactics, manipulation, forcing someone to buy a used car they don't need. How on earth does all of life is sales apply to Michael, who works a blue-collar job and is really just trying to fix his marriage?
Well, the societal definition of sales is fundamentally broken. Charlie reframes it completely. He says, to influence others, you must find out what they want and help them get it.
Help them get what they want.
Right. True sales is not manipulation. It is radical empathy. You cannot effectively influence someone until you deeply understand their worldview, their fears, and their pain points.
So if we apply this to Michael's home life, he has essentially been failing to sell Amy on the idea of a happy, engaged partnership.
Precisely. And it's because he hasn't practiced empathy. He has been complaining about what he isn't getting out of the marriage. He hasn't stopped for a second to ask, what does Amy need emotionally? What are her daily struggles?
He's just been pitching his own needs.
Exactly. When you shift your mindset from extracting value to providing service, finding out what the other person wants and helping them achieve it, you become a person of massive influence.
That reframing is brilliant. Because you are selling your kids on the idea of eating vegetables by understanding what motivates them. You are selling your boss on your new idea by understanding the company's pain points.
It applies to literally everything.
Yeah.
Which logically leads us to the byproduct of providing massive value to the marketplace. Pillar 9, finances and the wealth mindset.
Okay, let's talk about the money. Charlie tells Michael, profits are better than wages. This is basically the philosophy of decoupling your income from your time. It's about saving, investing, and achieving actual financial independence.
Right. And it is important to note here, we are analyzing Jim Rohn's philosophy as a factual strategy for the individual, focusing strictly on the mechanics of personal wealth building as presented to Michael in the book.
Keeping it objective.
Exactly. The structural difference between a wage and a profit is leverage. When you rely entirely on a wage, you are utilizing a system built and owned by someone else. Your income is strictly capped by the physical hours you can stay awake.
You are trading the ultimate finite resource time for a fixed dollar amount.
Correct. When you pursue profits, whether that's through investing in assets, real estate, or building a business, you construct your own economic engine. You leverage capital or systems to generate value even when you are sleeping.
So the core takeaway for Michael is personal agency.
Exactly. Living below his means, taking responsibility for his resources, and investing the surplus to eventually buy back his future time.
But managing capital is only half the equation of building a life.
Right.
The other half is managing the flow of ideas between human beings. And this seamlessly transitions into Pillar 10, communication.
communication.
Charlie defines it very specifically as two or more people working together to find the common ground of understanding.
The phrasing common ground of understanding is so deliberate. It requires a mutual arrival at a shared reality.
Bad communication is just so incredibly common. I always think of it like two people standing on opposite sides of a massive echoing canyon.
Just yelling at each other.
Exactly. You are both just shouting your grievances, your opinions, your defense mechanisms across the gap. You hear the noise, the tone is hostile, but nothing actually crosses the divide.
Because there's no connection.
Right. Good communication is doing the painstaking, really frustrating work of building a bridge across that canyon so you can actually meet in the middle.
And the steel and concrete used to build that bridge is active listening. The failure point for most people is their intent.
Their intent.
Most people listen with the intent to reply. They are simply waiting for the other person to pause so they can reload and fire their next argument.
Oh, I've definitely been guilty of that.
We all have. Active listening means listening with the explicit intent to comprehend. It ties directly back to that radical empathy we discussed in Pillar 8. You must understand the other person's reality before you can hope to align it with your own.
So if Michael actually listens to Amy, if he stops waiting for his turn to defend himself and actively builds that bridge, he steps right into Pillar 11, leadership.
Which is severely misunderstood. Leadership isn't just a corporate title or a position of authority over others. Charlie strips it down. Leadership is about helping others navigate life.
It applies everywhere.
It is as crucial in the living room as it is in the boardroom.
Michael is now tasked with integrating these first 10 pillars into his own behavior. And by doing so, he basically becomes the thermostat for his home.
Returning to the concept of mirror neurons from earlier, the household will naturally sync to the nervous system of the most grounded, regulated person in the room.
Wow, that's a huge responsibility.
It is. True leadership is an act of service and courage. A leader is the person willing to go first. They venture into the dark, they take the risks of personal growth, they endure the ounces of discipline. By walking through that friction, they clear a safe path for their family to follow.
So Michael has to lead his marriage out of the darkness by changing himself first. He cannot wait for Amy to be the leader.
He has to go first.
And this brings us to the emotional climax of the story, the ultimate test of this entire philosophy, and honestly, a massive twist. Pillar 12, leaving a legacy.
It's quite a conclusion.
Let's set the scene for you. 3 months have passed since Michael first broke down on that rural road. He has been doing the work, he's reading, he's actively communicating with Amy, his health is improving.
He's applying the pillars.
Yes. So he decides to drive back to the 12 Pillars estate to properly thank Charlie for changing his life.
He arrives at the estate, but instead of wandering the grounds looking for the gardener, he actually goes up to the massive front doors of the mansion and rings the bell.
Right. He expects to meet the wealthy owner, Mr. Davis, and perhaps, put in a good word for his groundskeeper.
The door opens, and Michael is stunned. He is standing face to face with the actual Mr. Davis. But Charlie wasn't the groundskeeper. Charlie was Mr. Davis.
The old man in the overalls, just tinkering in the dirt, was the multimillionaire owner of the entire estate the whole time.
The realization completely disorients Michael, but the twist carries a profound, immediate tragedy. Michael learns in that very moment that Charlie, Mr. Davis, has recently passed away from a terminal illness.
Oh, man.
He had been dying during those entire 3 months they were meeting at the diner and walking the gardens.
That realization just stops you in your tracks. Charlie knew his time was rapidly evaporating.
It forces the final pillar into blinding clarity, leaving a legacy. Charlie spent his final precious days not hoarding his wealth, not hiding away in isolation, and not obsessing over his portfolio.
He didn't just fade away.
No, he spent his final weeks passing down the mechanics of a well-lived life to a frustrated, broken-down stranger he met on the side of the road.
The generosity of that is just staggering. It completely reframes every single conversation they had. Charlie wasn't just making casual chat with a guy whose car broke down. He was a dying man, urgently trying to plant seeds in someone else's garden because he knew his own season was over.
When we deeply analyze the philosophy of mortality and legacy, it clarifies what actually holds value. Charlie's true legacy is not the massive mansion, the perfectly manicured gardens, or the millions of dollars in his bank account.
None of that matters in the end.
The true legacy is the transformation he sparked inside Michael's mind. It highlights the profound difference between a resume and a eulogy.
The resume versus the eulogy. That is the absolute core of it.
A resume is simply a historical log of what you extracted from the world. Your corporate titles, your income brackets, your accolades. It is essentially a record of transactions.
Right.
A eulogy is a record of your character. It is the story of who you impacted, the courage you displayed, the grace you offered, and the light you brought into the dark spaces of other people's lives.
That's beautiful.
Charlie's resume ended with his death, but his legacy continues to breathe and walk through Michael's resurrected marriage and his renewed potential.
Looking back at this entire journey, from personal growth, health, and relationships, through goals, time management, the company you keep, continuous learning, empathetic influence, financial independence, communication, leadership, and finally, legacy. You realize these aren't just 12 random tips for success.
They are an interconnected ecosystem, a load-bearing architecture for the human experience.
Like a building.
Exactly. If you pull one pillar out, the roof sags. If you neglect your physical health, your emotional relationships suffer. If you manage your time poorly, your finances collapse. You cannot isolate these disciplines. You have to tend to the whole structure.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to remind you, the listener, that right now, in this exact moment, you are Michael Jones. Your car might not be smoking on the side of a rural highway, but you have just been handed the exact same 12 pillars that Charlie handed him. The blueprint for the architecture of your future is literally in your hands.
And the ultimate test of any philosophy is application. Knowledge without execution is merely entertainment.
So as you step back into the reality of your day, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over a question that demands a really honest answer. If someone were to inherit only your habits and your mindset today, exactly as they are right now, would they inherit a massive fortune of potential, or would they inherit a lifetime of crippling debt? Are you actively building a legacy, or are you just passing time? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.